Ms. Bowker, would you please raise your right arm, please? You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? State your name. Ms. Bowker, please have a seat up here and speak into the microphone when answering.
Ma'am, can you state your name, please?
Erica Bowker.
I'm going to have you shoot up a little closer.
And Erica, where do you live?
I live in Aberdeen.
Okay. Are you familiar with my client, Brad Quist?
Yes.
How are you familiar with him?
He is my fiance.
Okay. And you're aware of why Brad's in the courtroom today in those circumstances, correct?
Correct.
First, Erica, can you tell the jury just a little bit about your observations of the relationship between Brad and Ron Witchy?
They were very good friends. They were very good friends.
Okay. Did they hang out together frequently?
Yes.
Did you ever see Brad doing nice things for Ron or anything like that?
Objection relevant?
Yes.
Sustained.
Okay. Yesterday, Erica, there was some testimony from a gentleman named Mac Higgins. Are you familiar with who Mac Higgins is?
Yes.
Mr. Higgins testified that he had a conversation with Brad after Brad was released from jail, okay? Are you aware of when this conversation took place?
There was no conversation.
Was there a time when, well, let me ask it this way. Did Mac Higgins come to Brad's house at some point after Ron was released from jail?
Yes.
And were you there?
Yes.
Okay. And so tell us about what occurred between Mac Higgins and Brad that day.
I was walking outside, coming back from the park on 8th Avenue, and Mac had come driving up upon me, and he said to me, the guy that you're with, I read in a paper that he's going to be released. And I knew that was a lie because it was not in the paper.
Okay. But at some point just let me strike that. Whose home were you at this point?
I am actually going to be in front of the residence of the apartment.
Of Brad's apartment?
Yes.
Okay, so you're outside?
Yes.
Okay, continue on with what happens then with Mac Higgins.
So I walked with him and he had a machine that was making noise, and we come in and I said, your friend's here, Mac, who I only met once before. Whenever we come in and we sit down, Mac lit a joint up and lit it up, took a hit, and he passed it to Brad, and Brad nodded no.
Okay. And so Mac brought a joint with him.
Yes.
And can you describe what the joint looked like?
It was very large, about as large as my pinky.
Okay. And I'm not familiar with what joints look like. Is that abnormally large?
Pretty large.
Okay. And so what happens next then when Matt comes to the house?
He's still smoking it, and I smoked it with him.
Okay. And then is there a conversation, or does Mac start asking questions, or what happens next?
Yeah, he was asking Brad right off, like what happened and everything. Brad just sat there with he didn't, because he just had gone out.
Okay.
So I'm, take it like he was sensitive about it.
About what had happened?
Yes.
And so, just so I understand what you're saying, ma'am, Mac was asking questions to Brad.
Yes, correct.
Was Brad responding?
No.
Did Brad have any conversation with Mac about the incident concerning Ron?
No, there was no conversation.
And were you present in the apartment this entire time that Mac was there?
I was in an apartment the entire time. I left the room once for like 3 minutes.
Okay. And when you left the room, is it possible that Brad responded or had conversation with Mac at that time?
No, because it's connected, like the apartment. There's no door, and I can hear, because Brad's voice is distinct. I can hear him loud.
Okay.
I mean, when he talks, I can hear Brad. So no, I did not hear Brad.
Okay, so you're for a couple minutes in the kitchen. Had you heard Brad's voice which you say is loud, you would have heard it.
Yes, I would have heard it.
That's all I have, Judge.
Mr. White?
Thank you, Your Honor. You said, Ms. Bowker, you're Brad's fiance, correct?
Yes.
So you don't want to see anything bad happen to Brad, do you?
No.
You told the jury that Mac Higgins came with the marijuana joint and he had smoked it and you had smoked it, correct?
Correct.
You were high, weren't you?
No, it wasn't.
You haven't described yourself as being stoned that day from smoking that marijuana?
No.
You've never used the word stoned about smoking that marijuana that day?
No, I was not.
You remember when you talked to Detective Ternowski about this, correct?
I wasn't.
You have to answer out loud, ma'am.
I was not stoned.
You remember when you talked to Detective Ternowski about this, correct?
Yes.
You don't like Mac Higgins, do you?
He just didn't seem like he was a very good friend. I mean, he just,
You don't like Mac Higgins, do you?
I don't know him that well to dislike him.
Have you ever told anybody you don't like Mac Higgins?
I didn't. I said it to the detective that interviewed
You told the
me.
detective, I do not like Mac Higgins, didn't you?
Doesn't mean I like.
Ms. Bowker, did you tell the detective that you did not like Mac Higgins?
Yes, I did.
You started out by saying there was no conversation between the defendant and Mac, correct?
Correct.
And I'm not asking you what the defendant said, but you're telling me the defendant never spoke a word to Mac?
Pretty much, no.
So Mac gets to the house and he asks,
He's just pretty.
Mac gets to the house, he asks the defendant questions, but the defendant doesn't respond to any of Mac's questions.
Mac just pretty much invited himself. Like, you know, I was being friendly when he showed up.
Mac gets to the house, he asks the defendant questions, but the defendant never responds at all, is what you're telling the jury.
Yep.
How long was Mac at the house?
Yes. What's
How long was Mac at the house?
less than 15 minutes?
You actually left the room 3 different times, didn't you?
Pretty much, yeah. It's just like into the kitchen. It's not that far.
Just told Mr. Dorr you only left the room 1 time for 3 minutes. That's
Well,
what
like-
you just testified to, is that right?
Well, it was a while ago.
Okay, so what you just told Mr. Dorr is not accurate? Is that what you're telling me?
It's pretty accurate for me right now.
Okay, well, let's get this right because we need to know how many times you left the room. You told Mr. Dorr I left the room 1 time, correct?
Correct.
I can't understand you. Sorry, ma'am.
Correct. Whenever I walked into the room, I just would go in and out of the room. Like, I was in and out, back and forth.
So the room
It's connected.
the defendant was sitting in with Mac, and Mac was asking him questions, and you said the defendant wasn't responding. You left that room more than 1 time?
I don't recall like leaving back and forth. Like, it's like connected. So it's like I'm not really actually leaving the room.
You told Detective Ternowski you left that room 3 different times, correct?
That's the.
You told Detective Ternowski you left the room that Mac and the defendant were sitting in 3 separate times. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, like.
You only talked to Detective Ternowski about a week ago. Is that right?
Yeah. I was just like, it was in and out. It's not really like a separate room.
Well, it is a separate room.
Yeah, I know, but.
It is a separate room, isn't it? Is that you got to say yes or no? I'm sorry.
Yes.
So it is a separate room. Yes, is what you said.
Yes.
You couldn't actually hear what was going on the entire time, could you?
No.
There was background noise,
I mean,
wasn't?
well, yeah.
Okay, let's make. I want to make sure everything's accurate. Could you actually hear what was going on the entire time?
Well, yeah, I mean, the room is right there.
You told Detective Ternowski you couldn't hear everything that was going on.
But then I could hear.
She's got to type everything we're saying. So let me finish my question.
Okay, I apologize.
That's all right. You told Detective Ternowski you could not hear everything that was said. Do you remember telling Detective Ternowski that?
Not exactly everything. I mean, Mac was just talking away.
Do you remember telling Detective Ternowski because you left the room, you couldn't hear everything that was said? You remember telling Detective Ternowski that?
All I know is I didn't hear Brad's voice.
But then you went on to tell Detective Ternowski there was background noise, correct?
Yeah, but I can
And you said there was a
overhear
radio
it.
that was loud?
It was not loud.
Did you tell Detective Ternowski the radio was loud?
It was average, pretty much. I don't know exactly what I said.
You said that there was a fan in the background, correct?
Well, yeah, it's summertime.
You said the air conditioner was running loudly, correct?
Loudly, I mean, all air conditioners are loud.
Well, the air conditioner, I can feel it's on in this room right now, and I don't hear it. Do you?
It's central air.
Objection, Your Honor.
So it wasn't.
Sustained.
So it wasn't central air, is what you're saying.
Nope. No. No.
Okay, so it was a loud air conditioner. Yes or no?
Yes, it was not loud, but it was
And then
loud.
you said that Mac's machine was making noise too, so it was
Yeah.
hard to hear.
I mean,
Correct?
correct. But I didn't hear Brad speak at all.
But you said you couldn't hear everything that was discussed because there was background noise and you left the room, is that right?
And Max, yeah.
So you couldn't hear everything that was said.
But I didn't hear Brad's voice.
But you left the room, ma'am, didn't you?
It's not exact. Have you seen it?
Did you tell
Have you
Detective-
seen the room? The
Yes, I have.
apartment?
But you can't ask me questions. I have seen the room, but you can't ask me questions.
But you answered it.
Okay, but you can't ask me questions. My answer is yes, I have seen the room.
Well, thank you.
They're separate rooms, aren't they?
Yes.
And you told Detective Ternowski you left the room and you couldn't hear everything that was said. Is that correct?
I didn't hear Brad's voice.
You didn't hear everything that was said. Is the question confusing? You didn't hear
Somewhat.
everything that was said.
I didn't hear everything that was said because of, yes, the noise, but I didn't hear Brad's voice.
I don't have anything further, Ms. Bowker.
Mr. Dorr.
Thank you, Your Honor. Erica, just a couple of questions.
Yes.
State first asked you the question, you don't want to see anything bad to happen to Brad. Remember him asking you that question?
Yes.
You're aware that you're under oath, correct?
Yes.
And you're aware of what the charge of perjury is, right?
Yeah.
Are you willing to take a witness stand and lie and commit perjury for Brad?
I'm not lying.
Okay. And you're not willing to do that
It's
here?
just like, yeah, it's like, I mean, I didn't think I'd ever have to talk about this.
I understand.
Just,
Here's my other question, Erica. The apartment that Brad lives in, can you just describe how the rooms are set up?
and when you walk in, there's a living room, and then right off to the right, there's the kitchen that leads into the bathroom, and that's it.
And
It's like pretty much all conjoined.
okay. And just so I understand your testimony, between the living room and the kitchen, there's no door, correct?
Door.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No door.
Okay. And your testimony is, even when you stepped out, you did not hear Brad's voice. Is that correct?
No, I did not hear Brad's voice.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Mr. White.
Briefly, when Detective Ternowski said to you, Ms. Bowker, you heard Mac ask the questions, you said yes, right?
He was just kind of like,
Ma'am, I don't mean to just, he's asking for a yes or no question, answer.
I understand. Sorry, I apologize.
I'll ask that again. Detective Ternowski asked you, did you hear Mac ask the defendant questions, and you said yes?
Yes.
And when Detective Ternowski said, did you hear the defendant respond to Mac's questions, you said, well, I left the room a couple different times. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I don't have anything.
Yes.
Mr. Dorr.
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Bowker. You may step down. You may call your next witness.